Welcome to another edition of News Bites here on Daily World Television. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the executive order that Donald Trump has issued concerning the travel ban to the United States that affects 7 different countries. The reason we're going to talk about this is because we are one of the few media outlets who refuses to engage in fake news. We are separating fact from fiction, and we are exposing some of the nonsense that is out there on the internet because people are semi-hysterical over this, acting as if this is something new, and it's not. Let me prove it. In the year 2015, then American President Barack Obama passed what was called the Antiterrorism Travel Act. Again, it was passed in 2015 and it was put in force. What Obama did is he froze the ability of people for 6 months, that's half a year, from countries like Iraq, Somalia, Iran, Syria, Yemen, and so on, to travel to the United States. The reason Obama did this is he needed to go and figure out how to help ensure that the United States remain largely protected, far more so than not, against terrorism. We must remember that the terrorist group, the Islamic State, has bent over backwards boasting about the fact that they have infiltrated various so-called refugees and have planted their terrorists and suicide bombers, people who later go on to commit acts of terror, into the ranks of those who would go into a destination country posing as immigrants. France has been a victim of this. So has Germany. So has Europe as a whole. The United States, not so much. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. Now, where was the media and all of these protesters who are beside themselves with anger now? Where were they 2 years ago when Obama did it? They largely did not exist. That proves that they are hypocrites, that they are just Trump haters or people who have a different agenda, or they're proving to be, once again, what their manipulators would call useful idiots. The coverage against Trump and the criticism against Trump for reimposing this law, where he doesn't even mention the countries. The only exception is Syria, and we'll come back to that in a moment. The hypocrisy is just disgraceful. And let me give you one very good example of how another major news media skewed their coverage on this. If you look on the internet, you can easily Google search for a phrase that basically said that Trump did not ban immigrants from countries he has business interests in. Can you believe that, folks? That's how disgraceful this objective coverage has been. Since Trump is redeploying or reinitializing a law that was already on the books, banning people from these countries that Barack Obama passed, where Trump has his business interests is irrelevant to the issue. And no, he doesn't have them in these countries that are affected. But you might as well start talking about unicorns because it's just as relevant. It is a red herring. It is a phony straw man. And it was brought up because these media entities were largely in the tank and pro-Hillary, and they're still upset that Hillary lost the election due to her own fault. We must remember that almost every media outlet, except ironically this one, said that Trump could never win, that Hillary was going to win by a landslide, and that did not happen. Trump won the Electoral College, Hillary won the popular vote, but that's not how the American system works. Trump campaigned to win the Electoral College, and he did. Now that he is the president, like it or not, he must be judged on the merits or lack of what he does, not what the media distorts and claims he does, when in fact he's not doing it at all. We are one of the few media entities to point out the fact that groups from countries in the past have been banned in the United States before. It's nothing new. In the 1970s, Jimmy Carter did it. He's a Democrat, Mr. Liberal, Mr. Human Rights. He not only banned Iranians from entering the United States, he even kicked out a bunch of students from Iran who were studying here and would have made great American citizens had they been allowed to stay. But he kicked them out, just deported them. It didn't matter how good they were gone. And then Barack Obama in 2015, because he wasn't taking the security of the United States responsibly, had to impose a 6-month freeze so that they could go back and reassess the situation, because the terrorist group, the Islamic State, whom Obama arrogantly dismissed as being junior varsity players, although he lied later and said he never said it, even though it's beyond question he did, he had to go back and reassess everything. Turns out that they're more than just junior varsity players. They're hardcore Islamo-fascist terrorists. And let me tell you what the difference is real quickly between an Islamo-fascist and an Islamist terrorist group. As Daily World has reported before, because it is true, an Islamo-fascist group seeks worldwide conquest or domination. The Islamic State published a couple of years ago a so-called 5-year plan where they intended to reconquer all the lands that Muslims once occupied, which basically covers the areas of North Africa and as far west in Europe as Portugal, all the way down to the southern tip of India. That's a lot of land. They unite behind a single all-powerful caliph, as they like to call him, and that's al-Baghdadi. So that is an Islamo-fascist terrorist group, one who unites behind an all-powerful leader and desires global conquest. An Islamist group, like the Taliban in Afghanistan, they're not interested in what goes on in Spain. They don't care what goes on in Hawaii or Alaska. They're interested only in their specific region. The Afghan Taliban are interested only in what goes on in Afghanistan. They have no desire to take over the world. They're not interested. But yet here you have the mainstream media saying, oh, they're an Islamist group, the Islamic State, or Al-Qaeda is an Islamist group. No, they're not. Al-Qaeda is just like the Islamic State. They seek world conquest as well. So don't confuse the two. Now let's talk about Syria for a moment. The reason Syria is the only country mentioned in Trump's executive order, and the reason its ban is indefinite until further notice, is because Trump has told the Pentagon, his military geniuses, supposedly, to go ahead and come up with a plan in 30 days on how to destroy the Islamic State permanently. That includes working with Russia, in theory, and now maybe closer with Great Britain. So this is why there is no fixed time for Syria, because you can't look at your magic crystal ball and pick one. Yes, it is indefinite or until further notice. It is a logical, smart, and prudent thing to do. Unfortunately, it does affect refugees trying to flee Syria. But let's be honest here. There wouldn't be as many of them if American President Barack Obama and his then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton hadn't gotten the bright idea to depose Syria's brutal dictator Bashar Assad in the first place. The hypocrisy here is just arguably a war crime and a crime against humanity, because when Barack Obama ran for president, he criticized and attacked Bush for engaging in a policy of what he called nation building. But if you look at what Obama did once he occupied the White House, he did many of the same things. He overthrew the regime in Libya. That hasn't worked out well. Syria, he failed. Bashar Assad has never been stronger now. And the powers that kept him where he is have been Iran and Russia. Now the rebels that the United States backed under Obama aligned with the Saudis and Turkey, whose real interest in this is only to go after the Kurds and Kurdish rebels. That's their real goal. If Obama had not interfered in the first place, there wouldn't be as many Syrian refugees as there are now, and this would be one less complicated problem that his successor, now Donald Trump, would have to sort out. So, to recap here, the important point. This hysteria that's going on over these protests is way off base, and it's not justified. It is a reinstatement of a law that was passed 2 years ago by Barack Obama. these same protesters and the media who are now up in arms over what Trump has done are conveniently forgetting or deliberately ignoring the point that Obama did the same thing for a 6-month period of time, twice as long. But where were they back then 2 years ago protesting? They almost, to a man or to an entity, did not exist. Put another way, they're hypocrites. Don't let them fool you. Thank you.